to the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel, powered by InsideTexas.com. It is a Wednesday live stream, going a little bit earlier to get you into your holiday weekend with some quality Texas Longhorns football content. I'm Joe Cook, got Eric Naleen, got Justin Wells, got Coach Dub. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, help us get to 8,000 so we can have some great stuff continue to head your way. As the season gets closer, we are 59 days away. And if you're listening on podcasts a little after the fact, please go ahead and give us a 5-star rating and review. Head to Inside Texas, use the promo code IT1, get 2 months of Inside Texas Plus for just $1. We thank y'all for joining us. Happy 4th to everybody who is here all over America. We got Dallas, we got Tyler, we got Austin, and we got the great state of California representing us here on this day. Gentlemen, what are y'all's big 4th of July traditions? Eric, I know this is a special holiday in your family, but aside from heading out to NorCal, what are some big traditions in your family?
Oh, man. I mean, we got 2 smokers rolling right now with a brisket. I had some briskets shipped out from 44 Farms. Just because buying brisket out here is a chore. I mean, it's $200 a brisket. So I had a couple shipped out. We've got 2 smokers rolling. We're going to pull them off tonight, rest them overnight. And, I mean, just the food. I'm doing a shrimp boil on Friday. It's just cooking, more people than you can imagine. We're going to have 5 RVs on the property in addition to 2 houses. Just a lot of people, a lot of music, a lot of late nights, probably some upset neighbors, but it's all good.
Justin, I know you know that I love the hot dog eating contest. It's going to be a lot different without Joey Chestnut. But what's going on in East Texas on the 4th?
Yeah, you know, Joe, there's not many things I could ever look down on you about. You're so close to perfect, but that's the most disgusting tradition, and that's not sports. Gluttony that's just the tackiest damn thing in the world. I don't know why people get into that so much. I gotta be honest, I'm just like anybody else. I like fireworks as a kid. Then you get a little bit older, fireworks kind of lose their luster. Then you have a kid. All of a sudden, fireworks matter again. And so at this time, my son and my mother are going to the fireworks stand to stock up. And I told them you don't need to because my neighbor spends like $1,000 on fireworks. And so July 4th is usually we since I got the little boy, it's a big deal for him. And so I hadn't had him in a week. So that's all I care about is my sight, my son, and having a good time.
Anything in the Williams family, Coach?
We usually all family goes to East Texas, actually, where we can kind of pop fireworks because you can't do it in the city. And so we kind of go out in the country, man, let loose. Growing up, we used to have fireworks wars, you know, like the little Roman candles and shoot them at each other. But I can't do that anymore. But I can't move like I used to, so that's not safe. But yeah, probably take my girls to a fireworks show somewhere so they can see them. You know, that's pretty much it.
I got to say one more. I got to say one more tradition that Justin will like is the giant wiffle ball game out front. I mean, it's mayhem. Dirt, wiffle balls everywhere, swings and misses. People putting knuckle curves to work. Wiffle ball stuff. It's the 4th of July. It goes down to my family.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I'll be headed to Palestine, Texas tomorrow, so I'll be up in that East Texas way, and I'll probably be firing some fireworks off as well. Looking forward.
It's only 100 degrees with 90% humidity, so have fun.
Yeah, there are trees. It's all fine. It won't be that bad around where I'll be and under the pine trees. So make sure y'all get your questions in. We will get to some of them over the course of the show. But to start off, we have a couple topics that we want to hit on. And one of them is comparing and contrasting what happens when you're going down your recruiting board, you're looking over some targets, and you're just kind of assessing where you are at on the battlefield. When we look back, way back with a history lesson, Charlie Strong, as Justin and Eric can attest, and Charlie, you can too, he was very, very cautious, deliberate even, might be the right word, with issuing offers. I think you could look and they maybe put out 70 a cycle, and it wasn't, Justin, I remember when we were in those days on Inside Texas, commit stories were a big deal, obviously, especially all those ones you had to write at the end of the cycle. but we had offer stories just because of how precious that staff treated them. And they had to treat them that way because they were going 5-7 and 6-7 on the field. They had to do something to make sure that those offers meant a little bit more. Didn't always work out. Herman kind of split the difference. I feel like he was pretty regular out in California, out in Arizona, obviously, somewhat in the Southeast, trying to get guys. But he would make sure that those Texas offers to in-state kids meant a lot more. Sarkisian seems like he gives a lot of offers, Justin, but he only focuses his pursuit on a handful of guys and doesn't have his assistants or himself really deviate too much unless they like really, really have to. So as we're here right now on July 3rd, what do you feel like the strengths and the weaknesses of that approach are as we have some concrete evidence in a few different recruitments of how that seems to be working so far?
Well, I think Eric and I should both take a shot at this one. This is a little bit more loaded than the general questions we get. Some of the strengths is that you play to your strengths. You stick to your guns on your evaluations, and you continually evaluate. If you push too hard too early, you might get a couple kids in the class that by the end of the cycle you don't want in that class, or you don't feel like are fits, or you might lose out on someone else because you had a couple guys take your spot. And so Sark doesn't feel like he has to push early. He likes to play the long game. And we've said that 100 times. I'm sure fans are tired of hearing it in June and July. They don't mind hearing it in November, December when it matters. And that's why Sark's made it so important. You know, last year's class, well, a lot of it was built off of, you know, the momentum from the year before. And then they go to the playoff this year. So you would see a residual effect with this class. You're just not always going to see it in the early summer. It's not part of his strategy. If you can get those guys in at that point, I think it's big for him. Obviously, they would take them, but they're not going to push too hard because they want to make absolutely sure. He's got such a culture right now. I feel like he's more protective now than he was 3 years ago. I feel like he's more judicious in some of these offers and some of these guys that where they rank him and where they put him on the big board. The mental eval is such a big thing. So that's the positives I see from it. The only thing I think from a negative standpoint is you don't get that instant gratification that Texas fans and that college football fans in general want when it comes to recruitment. It's funny. Anytime you get a recruit, it's boom for 15 minutes, and then that sort of wears off. And anytime you lose a recruit, it's terrible for about 15 minutes. And then who's the next recruit? You move on to the next one. And so I want to hear E's take on that one as well, because that's actually a really good question and subject. But that's kind of my, my macro view of Sark so far.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're in a rough patch right now. There's no denying that. But it's a tempest in a teapot. It's not going to last. I'm not worried about it. I've been talking to people that are tied in. They're not worried about it. Ask us in December. And that's kind of that's my stance. Ask us in December. That's how I feel about it. If you go back to what Strong did some good things. Waiting late to have as much data as possible was a smart thing. Sometimes I think he did that because he was his only recruiter and he had to, and he didn't have much help. But having as much data as possible is smart. And Sark is fine with that as well. One thing Herman did well was he pushed very hard early. But he pushed hard often with the wrong person. He was I think they made a lot of poor evals. I think they were rigid to their eval. They would stay on it no matter what. This is the guy we're going to get. This is the wide receiver we need. When to me, it was pretty clear that wide receiver was 5th or 6th in the state, maybe even not even that. I think Sark is more deliberate in a good way. And right now everything right now is NIL related. I think Texas is just playing the hand it has right now. And it's going to even out when it needs to. I'm not worried about it. I've seen some kind of, I'm seeing some interesting questions here or comments. I think some of these people need a little more insight on them.
One thing that always kind of sticks out to me is, it's the Arch Manning recruitment. In that Texas sent AJ Milwee to Dripping Springs a couple times, not much more than that, but a couple times to Dripping Springs to see Austin Novosad. I think they ever offered him, but they went out, did their due diligence, I think, over the course of that spring of 2023. And then once Arch jumped in, the job was done. So they do due diligence, but at the same time, they don't really pivot too much from the top of their board. Charlie, kind of what Eric mentioned, though, is that this is different a little bit than a couple of years ago and even, maybe 2 cycles ago, in that NIL has just blown up into being a major factor. So how much do you really want to deviate from the top of your board when you understand that things could really change, things could really pop up in November, December that make these recruits a lot different?
Yeah, I think the board moves depending on who you're going after. It's always set up. You got your evals, you got your offer, then you got your offer takes, right? And the big guys are going to be on offer take because they're in red on the board, and you're going to take them no matter what. Sometimes you may be willing to pay more than the others. Then you got your next guys in line who are offered. You're still evaluating them, but they may not be as high as the other guys. Then you got your just guys, your straight eval, like the quarterback you talked about at Dripping Springs. So, but NIL changes a lot of things, man, because if you don't push hard early or whatever the case, some other school may try to jump in and go all in on a kid, right? All the way up until December. But I think with Sark playing a long game, sometimes you let people get out in the early in the race, right? We just kind of keep running along. They might run out of gas, and then you catch them right there in December, right? You just kind of stay due diligent and trust your process. And if at the end of things work out at the end of the race, and you get them in December, even with NIL. So you just got to kind of trust your own process instead of worry about everybody else.
I feel like the proof is in the pudding because, Charlie Strong signed top 10 classes. Tom Herman signed a top 3 class, but it was unbalanced, and signed some, shaky classes outside of that. Sark has signed, top 5, top 6 classes every year. Is his approach the right one? Are there some things you would maybe alter? I feel like there's always a little bit of a detail to change, but compared to those 3, it seems like Sark's the operation you choose 10 times out of 10 almost.
I feel I would look foolish if I questioned how Sark is doing this. He's been the guy that showed up and changed the program, changed the trajectory, changed the mindset across a national scope. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know what the secret sauce is to the perfect recruiting cycle and class every year. I will say this, and it's never been more true. Every single recruitment is different. They are all their own story. NIL is definitely entered into the discussion so much more, especially on your higher end guys. But I'm not about to second guess a guy that has consistently won more games each year, put more guys on this roster that were elite talents, put more guys in the NFL than Herman and Strong maybe did combined for a spell. Like, I'm not going to do that. Are there little things that you might, with certain recruits that you feel like they should have pushed a little harder, a little faster? Absolutely. But that's our own personal judgment. I am not about to question what Sark is doing. We had plenty of reason to question Charlie Strong after 2 years. We had reasons to question Tom Herman about that second or third year in, and we started to see who he really is. I think Sark is showing us who he really is. He's not going to rush. He's not going to push. He really wants that authentic relationship. He really wants to get to know that guy. And NIL is such a big factor, but at the same time, he wants a guy that wants to be in Austin. He wants a guy there. And so I'm not about to second guess his system. So far, the proof is in the pudding, and that pudding tastes pretty good.
LL has a good point. Crazy to be having these conversations. It seems like most Texas fans would rather win in July than January. Well, you want to win in December at this point with the way things are going. But
Joe, Mac Brown ruined it for Texas fans. He spoiled the dog crap out of Texas fans because he wanted to be Mr. February. He wanted to be Mr. July. And there for a stretch window, he was. They were getting whoever they wanted, whenever they wanted to. And Texas fans thought, this is the norm. And it wasn't. And it's not. So Mac Brown did a lot of good things, but he also spoiled Texas fans to an extent.
And to Nigel Harmon's point, the long game also just looks so much different these days. The long game used to always be, hey, we're going to flip. Hey, we're going to flip you. Hey, we're going to flip you. Or maybe that's not what the coaches said to the prospect, but that's, the idea that they were operating with. At this point, the long game is a little bit different because there are July conversations and then there are December conversations. And the December conversations are the ones that are often way, way more important. So, and even so, we're still going to have some July conversations that head Texas way. A few recruitments that we will be tracking both on InsideTexas.com and here on this channel. So make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. We'll have any breaking news reaction here. And head to InsideTexas.com and use the promo code IT1 to get all the premium scoop. Another thing I wanted to talk about, and we are going to get to your questions in just a second, so make sure you keep them coming in. Got those stacked up for more towards the end of the show. Talk a little bit about some of the on-field stuff. I was able to write a couple things today looking at Texas Power 5 opponents. I know UTSA has a quarterback competition. Justin, I know you'll be on that one as well. Colorado State, I think ULM may not really matter too much what they do at quarterback when looking at the Longhorns. But there's a very big divider between what Michigan's doing and what the rest of the SEC is doing. And Justin, I'll let you get all the wordplay jokes that you'd like to in on this one, but we don't know if there's going to be an orgy or not under center in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you have that on a public platform. I know Eric remembers him, but Charlie, do you remember Alex Orgy? You remember that family?
Actually,
the dad
to the game versus Notre Dame in 2016. They recruited an older brother,
Alex. They
Yeah.
offered and was recruiting Alex Orgy. Then there was the middle brother, Anthony Orgy, and then I believe no, Alex wasn't the first
Alex
one.
is the baby, so
Alex is the baby. What was the first one? Who was the first one?
Austin Orgy.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
He looked like a traditional, inside linebacker there for a spell. But I always remember his dad was a big photographer, and he would always come with his big lenses and take pictures of his kids. And he was so proud of his sons. And forever, we always thought about the younger one because he was the quarterback of the group. And I got to be honest, I never imagined he was going to go to as big a school as he did, even though he was a talented athlete and a really smart kid. I didn't think Michigan was going to be, I thought that was basically out kicking his coverage. Now he's the starting quarterback. And what is he, Joe? Like 6'2.5", 235? I mean, he's essentially the Big Ten version of Jalen Milroe. Like, he is a big, hefty guy that makes really good decisions. And I don't think he's going to play out of his ability when they face Texas. At the same time, if that's Michigan's quarterback and you're PK, I'm probably licking my chops a little bit because I think you can get to him. I think you can force him into some bad decisions. And so I remember Alex Orgy. He was always the youngest one of that bunch. He was the one that the dad would always talk about as being the quarterback at a Rockwall. And then once he signed with Michigan, I thought, well, we'll never see him on the field. Michigan's going to recruit over him. And I couldn't be more wrong.
See, the thing with Orgy is that Michigan, whether it be Jim Harbaugh, whether it be Sharon Moore, they trusted him to an extent. They gave him real carries during really competitive games. I think he even had a couple carries during either the national championship or the semifinal. And the picture on the story I used was him running past an Ohio State defender. So they trust him somewhat. Are they going to trust him with passing? That's the thing that's really unclear. And maybe that's what Jack Tuttle offers. Maybe that's what one of the other guys. There are two Jadens on the roster. I think Jaden Davis, Jaden Denigan. I think there's one more. I think his name is Davis.
They're going to rely on Donovan Edwards, a running back, if you ask me.
Exactly. Like the blueprint for Michigan is kind of laid out, especially with Sharon Moore after watching what he did in the Penn State game. And
brought
the
tears to my eyes.
The other thing is Michigan's going to be able to rely on that defense, even if the quarterbacks aren't having a big, whoever it is, aren't game changers. Like, honestly, J.J. McCarthy was when he was called to be.
Yeah.
When you have a Tavondre Sweat and a Byron Murphy, when you have the two guys Michigan has and retained, that can just wreck an offensive game plan to where you don't need to score as many points. And you can, like you said, you can rely on Donovan Edwards, Colston Loveland, that crew. But looking to the SEC, Charlie, it's a little bit different. You go around, and I looked at basically every situation. Not everybody's a returning starter, but everybody feels good about who they got. Taylon Green, who you have experience with watching at Boise State. Arkansas has their guy. A&M has their guy. We'll see if he makes it through the season in Connor Wegman. We'll see what Jackson Arnold can do when the thing's all his. Same with Garrett Nussmeier, all that crew. but every team on Texas' schedule and basically every team in the SEC knows what they think they have at quarterback, knows who is going to be playing quarterback come game one. And I feel like that only adds to the challenge for Texas here in their first year in the conference.
You know what? Most people, they trust their system, right? I mean, you got to trust your coaching. If you feel like you got your guy, you got to go in all on him. But they're not going to let anybody outside of the building know that, if they got anything going on that they're shaky about. So, I mean, you're looking forward to, Milroe, up on the board in his system. Georgia quarterbacks with Mike Bobo back there. We know what kind of system he's going to run. So it really just depends, like, how much they believe in that guy. And we'll kind of see early on kind of what kind of offense they run, if they trust him enough. They're leaning heavy on the run game. And as you go, like, you really can't scout a team off 1 or 2 games, right? Because they're going to hold some things back. But by game 4 or 5, like, you really know what a team is, right? And what they do and what they're good at. And so I think you start judging by then if they really trust their quarterback to let him take over and have the keys to the car, or is he a passenger? He's just a bus driver. So we'll see.
Eric, do you think Jalen Milroe is going to fulfill Tom Herman's vision this year with over 200 carries?
Oh man, I first of all, I love Jalen Milroe. I think he's just a stud of a human being. I think I love that kid. I'm not huge on him as far as, but some of that has to do with Tommy Rees. Like if he was in Herman's, certain guys are meant for that Herman offense. They got to be tough, they got to be strong, they got to be durable. Lagway, Milroe, Ellinger, those guys are meant for that offense. They'd be all-time greats, I think, within that offense. As far as a pure passing quarterback, I think he's a little bit more limited, easier to game plan. Maybe not the right offense for him. They got to run the hell out of him. And then when they run the hell out of him, they're keeping out of the hands of a talented, ball carrier like Justin's about to mention Jamarian Miller under his breath, or just a lot of different good running backs. So I don't know if he's in the right defense or right offense, but I love him. And it kind of goes back to what you're talking about with Orgy is, if he's the starter, I'm just, I'm already big on Texas in that game, but I picked Texas to beat Alabama when Milroe was named the starter, just because I didn't think he was going to have a good enough grasp in that offense. I thought it suited up well for UT's defense. And it's kind of the same thing, man. I just think they're a little bit more limited for them what the modern college game demands. And you're not going to bully Texas like they did Penn State. That's just not going to happen. They're not going to have the motivation behind Harbaugh being out of the game, and they're just not going to have the physical talent to do it. They lost a lot of guys. So I'm, these quarterbacks that are easier to scout, they're not going to be the ones that trip up Texas. It's going to be Carson Beck that has the whole playbook at his disposal. It's going to be a quarterback that has the entire playbook that gives them trouble.
One guy I'm really curious about, and Justin, you and I have talked a pretty good amount about, like, don't sleep on Kentucky, is Brock Vandegrift. And that's a quarterback who has 5-star pedigree, didn't really get very many opportunities at Georgia because of who was ahead of him, who remained. But that's someone who Kentucky made sure to bring in, retained even after offensive coordinator Liam Cohen left, I think, for the NFL. They brought in a Boise State guy, and now that's an offense that has someone like Dane Key there on the outside playing wide receiver. They have a decent running game, and they're always going to be physical under Stoops. They have a good defense. Like, Brock Vandegrift could be someone for Kentucky who Texas fans may not know a lot about because of limited action, may not care a ton about because it's Kentucky. But it's still someone who Texas should probably respect because of what they could do in that offense with them.
Yeah, we had an episode on the deep dive months ago on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. Get us to that 8,000 mark. And we were each asked, which SEC team to watch this season on the schedule. And obviously, Georgia and Florida and those guys. I said Kentucky because of Vandegrift and because Kentucky has the sneakiest amount of athletes in any program in the SEC. Like, I don't think they get enough credit. Look at NFL rosters. You'll be shocked how many Kentucky defensive players are in the NFL. I swear every year they lose 2 or 3 to the league. And if they get that offense to match that athleticism with the defense, that's going to be a formidable team. That's going to be a good bunch. And so, and at the end of the day, Vandergriff is a flip phone guy. And listen, if you've got the confidence to walk around with a Motorola flip phone with the little clip on your belt in 2024, you're a G, okay? You're an OG. And so you got to look at both sides of it with Vandergriff. I think Kentucky could be sneaky good this year, guys.
I think they'll be a quality team. Another quality team and a sponsor that we're happy to bring along is Luxe Kitchen and Bath. They've been offering high-end kitchen and bathroom remodels for 3 generations throughout the greater Austin area. They've 5-star review after 5-star review on Google and Facebook and have an A+ rating from the BBB. So you can put your faith in Luxe Kitchen and Bath's award-winning designers, skilled craftspeople who will bring to life the dream vision for your home. That's not all, though. Luxe's all-star team provides full home remodels, large additions, and even commercial build-outs as well. So call Luxe 833-358-LUXE or visit luxekitchenbath.com to discover where quality meets luxury and begin the process of transforming your home. Free quote 833-358-LUXE or luxekitchenbath.com. We have the link in the description. All right, gentlemen, it is time to start talking recruiting. The Okie Longhorn, right off the rip, are we losing Pettijohn? Coach, this is one that's going to go to you. Texas A&M, Texas, Ohio State, and USC are the top 4. I think a July 6th decision. I think it's 7th decision is when it's at. Texas at this juncture kind of feels like it's fighting a little bit of an uphill battle.
I mean, like you talked about earlier, man, the race is not over to December. All these kids can commit, but until they sign, honestly, I don't know where they're going, right? You continue to recruit a guy like Roddy Pettijohn if he does pick someone else other than Texas. But if he comes to Texas, you still got to recruit him because everybody else is going to try to steal him from you. So you just got to fight until December, man, and get that guy's commitment and sign on the dotted line.
Lots of different dynamics with recruiting these days. But, Justin, you just posted some intel on Inside Texas as well about how, Pettijohn is operating in one sphere, but Texas has really battled themselves into the conversation for Madden Fair Emo.
Absolutely. It was an intel post from Charlie and myself. So you got to give my man, Coach Williams, credit on that post as well. Listen, Fair Emo, man, that looks like an early 2000s USC linebacker to me, man. You talk about tracks and smacks, has a neck that looks like he was born to play linebacker. And before he made it to Austin the second time for his official visit, we were under the impression Notre Dame had basically wrapped that thing up. And then he came to Austin. And I think Johnny Nansen and those guys put on the full court press and really made a strong impression. Listen, this kid was looking at a July 4th announcement only a few weeks ago. Now he's pushing it back. He wants to make absolutely sure the last thing he wants to do is decommit and have to do a flip late. And some of those kids are like, every kid will tell you, I don't want to decommit. But half of them really don't want to do that. They don't want to go through the process of telling coaches no and doing that. And so with Fair Emo, it's Texas and Notre Dame with USC hanging around the rim. He still hasn't OV'd to USC, but they're really close in proximity, so he can pop in there at any time. But I think this is going to be a Texas-Notre Dame battle. I really do. Eric and I talked about this ad nauseum when Nansen was hired. They're going to the West Coast, and they're going to get a linebacker from that region. Like, that's Nansen's bread and butter. We just didn't know exactly who it is, and we may not know right now who that could be. But the fact that they got Fair Emo to come off of his timeline to make such an impression and move the needle with him and his family on that OV, I think that's going to last to continue on with that recruitment as it prolongs into the summertime. Not knowing what his decision timeline is going to be, we'll definitely check that and update the board at InsideTexas.com when we do. But listen, people want to ask, well, is it Pettijohn or is it Fair Emo? It's both. Texas wants both. It's not one or the other, and you can't look at things with such a narrow view. They want both. They're not likely going to get both, but they want both. Eric, you want to take the rest of that?
I gotta chime in here because first of all, Emo and Pettijohn are two entirely different linebackers. I mean, we're talking about Madden might potentially grow into an edge. and Riley Pettijohn. I mean, with a 10-7, 100, these are two entirely individuals. It's like talking about a slot receiver and an outside receiver. It's like, what's the conversation even about? I've got to be honest, I'm a little worried about USC. I kind of think that USC charging hard might have something to do with him extending his timeline as well. I think Notre Dame's in a bit of trouble because they've got not only UT to worry about, but also Texas. But when it comes to Farimo and I'm not even sure if I'm saying his name right, and Pettijohn, it's stupid. It's a very stupid conversation because they're entirely different players.
Yeah, he's right.
I like this one from UT Parking as we go down the list of questions. Is it panic time, or do you think the staff is going to find a way to get the big fish? Also, is the staff high on Dylan Battle? Justin, Dylan Battle, I feel like that one has kind of cooled, and Texas has not been in pursuit for a while, but kind of a theme we've been going on and on about. It's not if you want to panic in July, go ahead. But if the real time to look at a lot of these different recruitments, defensive tackles especially, is in December.
It is. It's funny. This is the third video or interview I've done today where people have asked if it's time to panic about defensive line recruiting. And I thought of a pretty good analogy. I feel like it reminds me of Chris Jackson last year. Chris Jackson was having a hard time getting his footing that first 6 months on the 40 acres. It was a similar path. He couldn't get Micah Hudson. And it was such a big deal that they weren't making hay with the number one receiver in the state. Wingo didn't come along until later, and so or commit till later. And so I think you got to give Kenny Baker the same treatment. He's been on the job 5 or 6 months. He's trying to get his footing. He's trying to establish these relationships that have already been built. These guys, he's having to pick up the slack and create new relationships where we all know that we cover this on a regular basis. These things start 2 years in advance. And it's hard to pick up the slack when Bo Davis has a year head start or an 18-month head start on a Zion Williams. And so that's what you're dealing with right now. And so you're going to have to give Baker, you're going to have to give him time. Now, if we're having this same conversation next July, my tone will be different. I think that's fair. But right now, you got to give Coach Baker a shot. You got to let him get in there and get some of his guys. Look, I think they're in a great spot with DJ Sanders out of Belleville. Eric's very familiar with that recruitment. They're going to continue to push for Zion Williams. He's going to make his announcement tomorrow. I think everyone knows where he's going. But I'm not going to be surprised at all if he shows up in October for an official visit to Texas at all. They're going to still push for Myron Charles. I don't think they feel like that recruitment's over. They're going to keep going at that one as well. So you're going to have to give him time, guys. Look, it's an instant gratification society. Everybody wants it now. Burger King way, their way, right now, right away. Doesn't always work that way. And so you gave Chris Jackson a year, and we've seen the progress he's made. He has made incredible inroads with 3 5-star receivers right now, DeCorian Moore, Jamie French, and Khalil Lockett. We got to give Kenny Baker the same treatment. Let him try to figure out kind of his best moves. Sark and PK, he's not doing this alone, guys. Chris Gilbert is one of the most underrated staffers in the country, and he's doing yeoman's work when it comes to these guys as well. So, no, I'm not going to panic in July. That seems kind of silly. And I feel like with Dylan Battle, he has fallen off everyone's radar. This is a guy that was looking at some major programs as much as, 5 or 6 months ago, and then slowly but surely – teams just sort of gone to the side, and I feel like that's a TCU-SMU battle at this point.
The Metroplex is becoming the home of some very interesting recruiting battles, but there is one in the Brazos Valley that Eric knows pretty well. Kind of wanted to see what your thoughts on this one are. There was one point when DJ Sanders was like the 6th or 7th defensive lineman on the board. Not sure about that one. And now having to fight to keep him from going to A&M. Eric, not sure about that one as well.
No.
Muted, Eric.
Sorry, I didn't mute that when everybody was offered a quesadilla, if you heard that in the background. Peyton Ross, come on, man. DJ's never been 6th or 7th D lineman on the board. He's always been, I would say top 4. So he's a priority. They're after him hard. Let it play out. You're going to have to be worried about A&M, and just like in a way that you have to be worried about Oregon, but just the way that those schools are worried about Texas. It's about motivation. Right now, Texas should be highly motivated for defensive tackles. But again, it goes back to what Justin was just saying. in which December matters a whole lot more than July. The staff has no problem battling against one school rather than battling against 5 schools. They love to know who the target is on, and they'll go full bore. And they're going to end up with a good class. Don't worry about defensive tackle. If it's December and it's looking bad, then we can have that talk. But man, go back to 2022. They had Connor Robertson and Cole Hudson, the only offensive lineman in that class, and they had to kill that offensive line class. And what did they do? They had a huge flourish at the end of 2022, and it's basically one of the cornerstones of the program right now. I would not worry about tackle recruiting. I'm going to say that till I'm blue in the face. They're going to have to overcome some bad beats, though.
Like this one from our good friend Roaster. I'm not one of those nervous fans about recruiting. Is a top 5 class still realistic without help from the coaching carousel? Here's the thing about top 5 classes. If you can accumulate 5 stars, you automatically increase your chance just because of the way at least the algorithm, the math equations on rankings work. So let's say Texas shoots the moon and hits the jackpot and has 3 5 stars in the class at wide receiver. It doesn't really matter what position that they're at, but the fact that they are 3 5 stars, it's what makes a difference. You add in someone like Lance Jackson, who could be a 4th. Even Smith Aragbo is already in On3's top 30. As that progresses, he could become a 5-star. So now, as far as straight up ranking, yes, I feel like 5-star is definitely in the mix. As far as addressing needs and getting everything that they need, I don't know if it'll be top 5. I mean, the most recent one was number 6, and nobody's complaining about that one, aside from maybe defensive tackle after a bad beat on DeAndre Robinson. But as far as, hitting the algorithm, hitting the math, and making the top 5 mark, definitely still in play, I feel like, because of the 5 stars that they are still after. Charlie, I feel like this is a good one from you for okay, cool, hook them. I think the elephant in the room as it relates to recruiting is that we don't seem to be capitalizing on the momentum from winning the Big 12 and making the playoff. Many hoped we would. Kind of curious how this one works. I've always kind of thought that the next class is the indicator. So for, watching this 2023 season we just did, it'll have a larger effect in 2026. That's not always the case. I'm curious what you think on this one.
I think recruits can kind of see you got a great team, but you got a young team, right? So maybe they're not ready to jump in because it's like, I got to sit and wait versus other teams are selling, we need you right away. So you never know what the recruiting pitch is, but I think that momentum will gain as you go. Continuation, right? They might see, hey, Texas has been before they made it to the Sugar Bowl, they beat Georgia. Then the next year they weren't there, right? So maybe they want to see some consistency. You just never know what a kid is thinking about when it comes to recruitment and what the staff is actually selling. I mean, kids see other teams have been consistently good for years, right? So maybe that plays a factor, but I don't see it's not December yet. Like, kind of goes back to the recruiting. It's not December yet. Like, you never know what that final picture is going to be, right? You can talk about all the other things, but when you get down to the nitty and gritty in December, hey, we did win the Big 12 last year, and now we're heading out into the SEC to go win that thing. We're already considered a top team going into it. So just sell that. I mean, Sarkis won in the SEC. He can use that as well. So I'm not going to say the momentum is not there yet. Let's give it to December to see what the final signing class looks like.
Justin, I feel like there's a key term right there in that question, and it's Big 12. When Texas was recruiting against TCU, Baylor, Oklahoma State, it was different. Now they're trying to compete not just for Big 12 championships, but for national championships. They're going up against teams like Oregon, who were basically a handful of points away from making the playoff and overcome by the national runner-up. They're competing against teams like Georgia. They're competing against teams like LSU, Alabama, a bunch of different teams that have had success in the past few years. And so while they're attempting to capitalize, not just on the recent season, but on the SEC move, some of their competition has gotten a lot stiffer.
Yeah, I mean, winning the conference was their goal, and that was a team goal and a program goal, and of course the fans want that. But winning the Big 12 conference, that happened last December. And the real momentum was the college football playoff. That's going to always trump winning any conference, probably aside from the SEC. And so it's a new ball game now. You can't yeah, that you're going to have some momentum. And I think you made a good point that you'll see a little bit more of that probably with the 2026 guys. We know for a fact there's already had a couple jump in, and we know that there's probably a couple more that are trying to jump in. And so that momentum is tangible. But with this class, you're just going to have to play it out and do the long game like Sark does. And like I said, making the playoff, that you're going to see the residual of that. You just might not see it this second.
Eric, any thoughts on this one before we move on to one of our last few questions?
No, I'm over here reading Jeremiah Briscoe's meltdown.
Yeah, Briscoe's over here having a panic attack.
Hey, first of all, I am not fat. I got you. You call us the big fat liars. I am not fat. Hey, dude. Yeah, I don't know, man. Some of these fans are really hyper emotional. You know, that's what kind of the deal with being on the internet is.
Yeah.
Where was he? He probably called me a big fat liar when everybody thought Arch was going to Georgia, or Colin was going to go to LSU, or you know how we covered you know whether or not DeCorian Moore was going to decommit from LSU. Everybody's lying. They're just hyper emotional little bitches, dude. And you know sometimes we have to deal with them on the internet.
Hey, let me help Jeremiah out with his Fasusi panic attack. Michael Fasusi doesn't know where he's going right now. So why do you think some recruiting reporter knows? Michael Fasusi has a really good idea where he's going, but he doesn't know for sure. And anybody that insinuates otherwise, it's just feeding you dead grass. And so at this point, you have got to just be patient. And you can claim anybody lies about anything. I don't see where it's that subjective, where it's a lie or accurate or not accurate. No, Michael Fasusi doesn't know yet. And Lamont Rogers, I don't think we've written. I don't know how many times we've written. We don't think that's Texas. We don't think they're pushing him like they're pushing Fasusi. Matter of fact, we know they're not pushing him. We've never once pushed that Lamont Rogers was going to be in this cycle. So to help him cleanse himself and learn a little bit more than just calling Eric fat, which I feel that was over the line. Obviously, man. Eric is a very fit, trim man. Let's just give them the truth. That way they can either take their medicine and enjoy it, or they can pout and panic again.
Got one more I'd like to get to. Actually, two more, but one more that I think is a good way to end this from LL. We love talking about the evaluation process over on Inside Texas. Do players not develop during their senior year of high school? Well, I mean, if you don't play, that's one way to not develop, and that's tough to overcome. But Charlie, I feel like maybe what's the right way? You have experience in a G5 program where watching senior years of high school is just extremely important, because that lets you know if a guy who was almost there but not quite has turned into someone y'all want. As far as like the Power 5 level and the Texas level, it kind of tells you maybe for some guys at the tail end of a cycle, if you have room in your class and this guy has all of a sudden come up to the point where you need to offer him, that senior year could show you. I feel like senior year evals, while a little bit different in the portal area, are still just as vital.
Yeah, I mean, some kids do get better, some stay the same. I think I don't know how every staff does it different, but you know, just say UNLV, every recruit Friday, we kind of watch film, watch a kid from his junior year, then watch his senior year. Sometimes it's not much better than a junior year. Then you kind of like, okay, maybe this guy has kind of plateaued. He's where he's at talent-wise, right? But if he's gotten better, then it's like, hey, he might not come to us, but let's shoot our shot anyway, right? So it's kind of, I don't know, man, tailored to what you're looking for. But every kid gets better during the senior year in some aspect of it. You just got to try to find what he's gotten better at, right? Is he a leader on the team? It could be something small off the field, right? So say a kid doesn't develop, I don't know, kids do develop during the senior year. You just got to find which way they develop. And then those who don't develop, maybe like you said, they didn't play or they were injured. They just never got back to the form they were sophomore and junior year.
Hey, you want examples, LL? Warren Roberson, Jelani McDonald. Texas takes those senior evals seriously, and they'll take chances on those guys. When you'll see some offers in late August, early September, those are some of those senior evals going into their senior year that they've seen progress, or they've heard, or they've been told, or they've read. And so, yeah, of course they can develop into their senior year. It's just the elite guys get identified a little bit earlier. That's the only difference.
I also feel like it works the other direction and has with Texas, in that there have been some guys who have been in the class, and not going to put any specific guys out there, but there have been guys who were in the class who ended up not signing with Texas because they kind of got the message or lack thereof from the Longhorns. So it does work both ways, the senior eval opportunity and stuff like that. One last thing from our friend Roaster. Happy Independence Day tomorrow. Here's to the IT beer and bourbon fun. No Bud Light for Joe and Justin. I can abide by those wishes. Roaster, appreciate that as well. We appreciate everybody who has tuned in for this. What you got, Justin?
Stevie, don't cut me off, Joe. Don't you do this. Chris Bennett had a question, and it's a good question. Did Coach and Justin color coordinate? By God, we did. Because that's how we do it at InsideTexas.com. Come see us right now. There's a reason we're the best community in the market.
Head to Inside Texas. Use the promo code IT1. Get yourself 2 months of access for just $1. It's July 3rd. That'll get you through September 3rd. And if you're thinking about that, that's some post-game reaction for Colorado State and a little bit of pregame talk for Michigan. So a lot of different stuff going on. Media days, more recruiting, team info. You're going to want to come check it out. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, head to InsideTexas.com. Make sure you give us a 5-star review also if you are listening on podcast. Thank you to our new sponsor, Luxe Luxury Remodeling. We'll see you next time on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel, powered by InsideTexas.com.